So let's talk about what happens when who you believe you are, your deepest values, crashes right into what your body is telling you it needs to just function. This isn't just a story about food. It's about a conflict we all face in some way and how to find peace.
The first time I ate cheese after 10 years of being vegan, I cried. I'm gonna let that sit there for a second. These weren't tears of guilt or shame or feeling like a failure. It was something else entirely.
She talks about this moment as this overwhelming physical release, like her body was finally being listened to after a decade of being told no. She calls it a deep cellular thank you. Just imagine that feeling.
And that brings up a question, one that I think hits home for a lot of us, way beyond what we eat. When has your body known something was true, long before your brain was willing to admit it? Just keep that in your back pocket as we dive in.
Okay, so to really get why that moment with the cheese was so huge, we have to go back. We have to understand the power of the belief system that she lived by for 10 years. Because for a long, long time, there was this incredible clarity, a real comfort in having a solid ethical map for the world. Her story really kicks off back in 2013. Becoming vegan wasn't just a diet change, it felt like everything was finally lining up. Her actions, her values, and for the next 8 years, that feeling just got stronger, especially as she deepened her yoga practice. Everything felt right. Until 2021, when her body started, well, sending some very different messages.
And at the heart of all this was this beautiful concept, ahimsa, the principle of non-harming. For her, veganism seemed like the most obvious, the purest way to live that out. I mean, it makes sense, right? How can you preach compassion if you're taking part in a system that causes suffering? It was a really clear and powerful conviction to live by.
But here's the thing. No matter how pure or beautiful a belief system is, it eventually has to live in a physical body. And this is where the story takes a turn. It's the beginning of a slow, creeping crisis. And we're not talking about just feeling a little off. We're talking about real physical signs that something was wrong. Her energy was fragile, her hair was thinning, she had serious blood deficiencies, even an anxious, fluttery heartbeat when she was just resting. Her body wasn't just whispering anymore, it was starting to get loud. So, she finally goes to a doctor. And you know, the first thing the doctor said wasn't a lecture, it wasn't "I told you so." She just looked at her and said, "Your values are beautiful." What a way to start, right? Just total validation for the intention behind it all. And then came the truth she couldn't ignore anymore. But your body is asking for something different. And that's it, right there. That's the conflict. You have these two truths, one in your mind, one in your body, and it feels like they absolutely cannot exist at the same time.
There's this saying from one of her teachers that just nails this whole experience, right? The body whispers before it shouts. All those symptoms were the whispers. And all the attempts to just push through, to take more supplements, to ignore it, that was her trying to tune it out. But eventually, the shouting just gets too loud to ignore. So what do you do then? What do you do when the shouting starts? Do you just ditch your values? Or do you sacrifice your health? Well, she found a third way. And it was all about reframing the change, not as a failure, but as something much wiser. She called it integration. And this is maybe the most important idea in this whole story. Look at the difference here. On one side, you've got compromise. That feels like giving up, like failing, like you're losing a part of yourself. But on the other side, you've got integration. That's not about losing something. It's about expanding to hold two truths at once and finding a sense of wholeness and, wisdom in that.
This wasn't like flipping a switch and abandoning everything. It was this incredibly thoughtful, slow process. It started with just listening, actually listening to her body. Then, she slowly, carefully reintroduced certain foods, and eventually, she landed on this intuitive way of eating that could actually honor both her body and her values.
And this is where everything clicks into place. Her whole understanding of ahimsa, that core belief, it didn't get thrown out. It got bigger. It evolved. The question was no longer just about other beings. It became what choice creates the most wholeness for all beings, including yourself. That last part changes everything.
And that shift, that tiny addition of including yourself, that leads to what is, for me, the emotional peak of this whole story. It's this beautiful moment of reconciliation between her body and her beliefs. May all beings be happy and free. And now, finally, I include myself in that prayer. That's it. That's the moment the war is over. It's when you finally realize that the circle of compassion you've been extending to the entire world has to include you too.
And that really brings us to the core lesson here. This wasn't about giving up or failing. It's about finding a middle path that honors the messy, complicated reality of being a thinking, feeling person who also happens to live in a physical body with real needs. It's integration.
So we're going to leave you with that question turned back on you. Because this story isn't really just about food. It's about any rigid idea we hold that might actually be doing us harm. So where in your own life are your beliefs and your body at war? And what could integration, instead of compromise, possibly look like for you?